the king of the baby bears, Gary G Spot, is coming your way. As Bitcoin initiated a mega pump, Gary G panicked and released a statement that the spot ETFs that were filed were simply not juicy enough. And then Bitcoin initiated a mega dump. But what if I told you that something much bigger was actually happening? Right now, the price of Bitcoin was actually doing really well, above 31,000 US dollars or right around, and now it actually dumped significantly below 30, and now it's right around 30. By the time this video gets uploaded, we're going to be talking about price targets that are likely, but more importantly, what in Turkey Town just happened? Will Gary G's absolute rampage continue? Or in fact, is there a little itsy-bitsy, small little crumb of juicy goodness hidden within these news? So as you can see with Bitcoin, we were, over the past actually 2 days, it has been inching and creeping up, and we actually topped out a little over 31,000 earlier today. And price was still trending upwards for the most part. And then the king of the baby bears himself, Gary G Spot, initiated a statement, and he said, these are simply not juicy enough. I quote, he said, these are simply not ooey and gooey enough, and look what happened to the Bitcoin price. Just straight on down to 29,500 and immediately pumped back right up to about 30,000. Now, this is big, and I want to highlight a few things here. So, SEC is saying the spot Bitcoin ETFs were simply inadequate, or as I like to say, not juicy, not ooey and gooey enough. The SEC said a recent wave of applications filed by asset managers to launch spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds are inadequate, the Wall Street Journal reported today, citing people familiar with the matter. So TED Talks Macro putting this a little bit of an itsy-bitsy spin on this, saying the Bitcoin filings are inadequate, but BlackRock can still refile for the Bitcoin spot ETF. This is noise, IMO. This news is noise, meaning it's a non-event. It's not something to panic about, and that's exactly what the price did. Price immediately panicked and then decided, whatever, and we're kind of trading, granted a little bit lower than before the news, but the important wording he highlights is that SEC told the exchanges that it returned the filings because they didn't name the spot Bitcoin exchange with which they're expected to have a surveillance sharing agreement or provide enough information about details of that surveillance sharing agreement. And asset managers can update the language and refile. It could be interpreted that the SEC are indicating to BlackRock what they need to do to get it across the line and actually get it approved, which would be huge, right? With all this institutional interest, we saw BlackRock file, and then we saw basically every asset manager immediately after file for a Bitcoin spot ETF. And this could be interpreted as Gary saying, hey, basically, this is what you need to change. And then, let's say that gets changed, and then let's say that these ETFs would get approved. Again, maybe. Nobody knows. In my opinion, it's about 50-50. It could go either way. So if anyone's saying this is definitely going to get approved or definitely not going to get approved, I think it's silly. I think nobody knows. I think it is literally a 50-50 shot. I think this explanation of what could be going on with Gary's wording and what his announcement of this statement is, take it for what it is, right? I think that that's absolutely a possibility. And I do not think, and it's factual, it's not even an opinion, it's objective, that this is not just a blanket, no, none of these are going to get passed, because they didn't get denied. It was him simply saying they're inadequate. And Will Clemente also pointing out, even if all of these get, if they refile and they still get rejected, so basically the worst case scenario for the spot ETFs, if they refile these ETFs and they still get rejected, institutions still want your Bitcoin and are still looking for a piece of it. So ultimately, it doesn't really matter. And that's also what I've been saying since this ETF news has begun. Ultimately, I think that a spot ETF approval or multiple will absolutely pump the price, but I don't think it matters in the long run. And even in like the medium term, over the next few months, I don't think it's like a huge deal. Granted, if I would have to choose which one I would want, right, I would probably say, yes, approve a bunch of spot ETFs, because it would require to be backed by actual Bitcoin, which would ultimately, reduce the supply of Bitcoin, the circulating supply, and should make the price higher, right? More demand. So ultimately, if I had a choice, that's what I would say. But again, we're kind of debating over things that are not crazy important. Satoshi Flipper also saying that people already forget how FUD works. By the next day, usually it's forgotten. And I think this honestly is going to be forgotten, even shorter than that, maybe like in an hour or two. The refile is not going to be an event whatsoever. The market will continue to price in an ETF approval until there's a formal approval or denial. And I agree with that. I personally think that we actually saw like a mini ETF dump, rejection dump, meaning we saw what would happen to the price if they all got rejected. This is basically what that candle is. And I mean, it's about like 1,000 It was about a $1,500 candle. And so what percent is that? Okay, it's about down 4 or 5% on the day, about 5%. And if that's something that we should expect, if the ETFs get rejected, then that's nothing. That's truly nothing. Because again, those dips get bought up. And even with this, already it got kind of bought up almost immediately within that dip in and of itself. But today we see the stock market up a little bit. We're going to be heading into weekend trading here. DXY, this is important. We're getting rejected at a key level. DXY is getting rejected here. Might actually set a lower high from the high set back at the end of May. And that's ultimately the trend that I've been saying for the past year, that this is going to continue downwards. And pretty much for the entire year. And so far, that's exactly what's been happening. The DXY has been dumping since about November of 2022. But also, Bitcoin's monthly chart, look at this. We are creeping up in terms of positive momentum. This can accelerate rapidly. We take a look at this chart. I mean, look at this. The MACD is, I mean, this to me, doesn't this look eerily familiar to August of 2020, right? What was happening in August of 2020? Let's go back to August of 2020. Bitcoin was $10,000. And then it went up to $65,000. Now, granted, this is not going to be tomorrow, but over the next few months, this is exactly the same momentum that we see in every bull market also. This is the very beginning, I think, of the bull market pivot from bear market to bull market pivot. So very bullish signs there, extremely big. We're going to be getting a monthly close in just hours. By the time you're watching this, maybe we already have. But ultimately, yeah, it's really hard for me to look at these charts, even if we get a dump a couple $1,000s over the next few days, within the next week. It's very hard for me to see this as anything but bullish, constructive price action in a much wider context, new bull market. So ultimately, this news, this FUD, basically this entire market, the only bad news left in the Bitcoin market, in the crypto market, is will or will not a Bitcoin spot ETF be approved. It's all in the hands of Gary Gensler, which is a temporary thing anyway. It doesn't, whether or not, whatever he decides in the short term will not have a lasting effect long term. And all of this, that's the only bearish thing you can get excited about, because all the other narratives are basically gone. And Bitcoin, I think, will be initiating a very big bust over the next few months. Massive bust. Beginning of a new bull market, for pizza's sake. Take advantage of massive trading and sign-up bonuses if you're interested in trading with Femex or BitGet below. If you sign up with my links below, you can earn free XPT and additional massive sign-up and welcome bonuses as well. Without any further ado, it's from me.